Welcome to Business Miles, the podcast where travel, finance, and business leadership intersect. I'm your host, Anish Khadiya, Chief Business Officer at ITILITE. On today's episode, I'm joined by someone who's shaped how the world travels. Please welcome Pauline Frommer.
Thank you so much.
Pauline is a leading voice in travel journalism and the Editorial Director of Frommers, bringing decades of insight into how travel trends evolve and what they mean for travelers and others alike. Today, we'll explore the future of travel, changing traveler expectations, and what smart travelers and businesses need to know to stay ahead. Pauline, welcome to Business Miles.
Thank you so much.
We get started. Please tell our audience a little bit about your journey in travel and in life.
Sure. Well, I was born into one of the best travel businesses out there. My father, Arthur Frommer, founded the Frommer Guides kind of by fluke in the 1950s. When he graduated from law school, he was drafted into the army to fight in the Korean War. But luckily, he was the son of immigrants, so he had language skills. He spoke both Russian and German. So instead of being sent to Korea, which was a very bloody war, many of the men he trained with never came back, he got sent to Germany. And when he got there, he couldn't believe his good luck. He started traveling every day. Every time he had any time off, he would go to Rome or Venice or Florence or London or Paris. And when he got back to the base, his fellow GIs would pepper him with questions because a lot of them were too nervous to travel. You have to remember, this is right after World War II. Europe was in rubble, and they didn't think they could travel well on a budget. And so he would give them advice, and he thought to himself, maybe I should write a little book. So he self-published a book, and then when he got out of the army, he did it again. He wrote a book called Europe on $5 a Day that became the best-selling travel book of all time. And that led to the founding of the Frommer Guidebooks. We've now sold about 75 million books over the years. I was the first editor of Frommers.com, which is one of the oldest travel websites on the web. And I started traveling with my guidebook writing parents when I was 4 months old. So I've spent my entire life on the road, and now I'm blessed to do this as a living too.
That journey is truly amazing. Two generations in travel, and like you mentioned about your father, after World War II, world was, in a very, very different place. So to shape, multiple generations of how people travel is quite amazing.
Yeah, it was in a different place. He was speaking mostly for American travelers, and the dollar was very strong. The jet age was just beginning. Before then, it hadn't been affordable for people to fly across the Atlantic or the Pacific. So he was in the right place at the right time, but he also was a brilliant, brilliant writer. And people felt like they were talking to a friend. I think they still feel that way when they read the Frommer's Guidebooks because we hire the best local journalists all over the world to do our books, folks who never, ever take money from the hotels, restaurants, attractions they write up. Our only client is the reader. When you take advice online, often if it's free, you're still being sold something. So at least with the
Absolutely.
Frommer Guides, you pay a little bit for a book, but the advice you're getting is impartial and journalistic.
And that's a very high standard to maintain in today's world. And that brings me to my first question for you today.
Sure.
Today's travel is dominated by the Gen Zers. They often trust a TikTok video more than they trust a guidebook. In a world where going viral is more important than actual verified reviews, do you think the actual truth about a destination even matters anymore?
Of course, it still matters. Absolutely. And the problem is when you trust an influencer, you're giving your vacation decisions over to a marketer because that's what influencers That's what they are. They are being paid to gush about certain subjects. So when you take their advice on a hotel, you have no way of knowing whether that hotel is actually great or whether there's one right down the street that's cheaper and better. That's what we do when we work on our guidebooks. All of our writers will visit every damn hotel in the area. We don't just parachute in to give advice on what we see, the little we see. We do the hard work of visiting all the places so we can give a well-formulated opinion. So I think it's very dangerous to be leaving your travel plans to influencers because they don't know what is truly worthwhile in the destination. Often the really popular ones go everywhere. So they just parachute in, go to the places they get paid to go to, and then they create their videos.
And I've been a big fan of the Frommer's guidebooks. Do you also have a video guidebook? Do you do video guidebooks anymore?
We've never done video guidebooks. That would be hard to do.
Yes.
Just because, for example, our guidebook to the single city of New York is over 400 pages long. So to do a video of that, I think it would
Would
be
be
an
crazy.
epic, probably take, 10 hours or so.
Yeah, it would be a season, just on New York City.
Yes,
Yeah.
right.
All right, so fair enough. My second question is more about just how pervasive travel has become today. When
Oh
it
my
comes to
goodness.
modern travel, people go to places, historical places all the time. Let's take Barcelona as example. A lot of travelers go to Barcelona because they want to experience the local culture. But today, the same culture is now spraying travelers with water pistols to make them leave. If most travelers travel to feel welcome, but locals view travelers as an invasion, what is the root problem here? Is it
Well,
about the number of travelers showing up, or is it about travelers breaking a social contract?
I think it's actually the number of travelers showing up. In places like Barcelona, there are certain months of the year where there are more visitors than there are locals, and that's just not sustainable. It's meant that a lot of the housing stock has been turned into Airbnbs, so rent prices get unaffordable for locals. It means that when they want to go to their favorite restaurant, they may not be able to get a reservation because it's jam-packed with locals. It means traffic jams. I think it's simply the number of visitors. The typical travel advice always used to be go in the off season. But the truth is, for many destinations, not all, but many, there isn't really an off season anymore. I recently was in, or about a year ago, I was in Naples and southern Italy in early, early March, which normally should have been an off season,
Yeah.
but it was jammed with tourists. I couldn't get reservations at two of the museums I wanted to see. They were fully sold out. I didn't even make reservations in advance because I assumed I wouldn't have any competition. I think this has to do in Europe in particular with climate change. Right now you're nuts if you go to southern Europe between the months of May and September. They've been hit with
Too hot.
terrible, terrible heat waves. And so that has spread out when people are visiting. And for the really popular destinations, Paris, London, Barcelona, Florence, Venice, you just don't see off season anymore. So what we are recommending is maybe consider the secondary cities. I just was in the city of Utrecht in the Netherlands, as fascinating as Amsterdam, laced with beautiful canals, incredible museums, a beautiful cathedral to visit, really great food, and I spent like $65 a night for my hotel. In Amsterdam, the cheapest place I could have found would have been double that. And it's only half an hour outside of Amsterdam. So I could make Utrecht my base and explore Amsterdam during the day and then escape the crowds. But there are many, many secondary cities that often have nearly as many attractions as the brand name cities. So consider those.
And that's fantastic advice. And if I were to pick your brain on the best secondary cities back home in the States, which ones
Hmm.
would be your favorites?
Oh gosh, that's interesting. I think a lot of people don't go to San Francisco, but they don't go to Oakland. And there's some really interesting new trends in terms of attractions, in terms of cuisine in Oakland. It's actually very well worth visiting. A lot of people will go to, uh, let me see, Chicago, but not Milwaukee. And Milwaukee actually has a lot of really terrific restaurants, attractions, hotels. So those are two that pop to mind first.
Absolutely, and both of those resonated with me. In November, I had a chance to go to San Francisco, and it so happened because of the FAA shutdown, I had to change my flight. So I was flying into San Francisco, and that flight ended up getting cancelled.
Oh,
So I decided that let me go to a secondary airport and ended up traveling to Oakland. Beautiful airport. And then as I got out of the airport, I decided to stay in Oakland. So fantastic experience, and I completely second your recommendation for Oakland.
right. And that's a good point you're making. Often by flying into the smaller airports, you pay significantly less. And so, whenever you are looking for a flight, whether it's a direct flight somewhere or maybe a flight that requires you to change planes, look at the secondary airports. Say you're going to Berlin in Europe. That's a secondary airport, believe it or not. So you can often pay less by flying to Frankfurt and then taking just a quick hop on a cheap local carrier to Berlin, or flying to Paris and flying from there to Berlin. There are a lot of these cheaper airports that you can go to if you do it smart. So that involves doing two searches. Too often, people just do one search, are stunned by the prices, and never think of going to the most popular airport first and then hopping from there to a secondary airport.
Absolutely. And this is something I tell travelers all the time. Now, when you go by influencer content, you're so consumed about the city that you're going to that you don't think about your entire travel experience. And sometimes it helps to think about the entire experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, let's change tracks a little bit. Let's talk about people who serve you when you travel. So, airlines, hotels, the works. You've been looking at this at travel and the industry for so many years now. Airlines have been shrinking seats, hotels have added resort fees in cities, and now online travel websites are using algorithms that change prices based on your IP and device. Is the travel industry actually being hostile to its travelers now? What's your opinion?
Wow. Well, I don't know if I want to say hostile. I would just say strategic about getting as much money from each client as possible. I mean, now that we have AI, it's able to crunch the numbers looking at historic trends and charge you what the market will bear. So I write the Frommer's Guide to New York City. There are these observation decks, the Empire State Building, Top of the Rock. They're very popular, but you can pay $20 more in the course of one day, depending on what time you go. If you go first thing in the morning, or if you go at 5 p.m. when the sun is setting and it's a wonderful time for photography, you will pay $20 more on the same day than you would have if you went at noon. And we're seeing that kind of dynamic pricing in many areas. There's also something I call surveillance pricing. There's a whole class of new businesses that have grown up just in the last 5 years whose only job is to create profiles of different zip codes, different areas, and in those profiles they figure out how much somebody pays for rent, what they might pay for a car, what their salary is, and then they sell that information to the companies that sell travel and other goods online. So if you live in an expensive place like I do, I live in New York City, I am going to be shown a very different price for a hotel room. Even if that hotel room is in Milwaukee, then will somebody who is based in Hot Springs, Arkansas, simply because they know I pay more for my daily life and they assume I can afford the higher price. That's why I use a virtual private network. There are a number of them out there. You can get a subscription for $15 to $20 a year. It also allows you to watch really cool British TV shows. But I put in different home addresses when I'm searching for travel. So on one search, I might do it as if I'm in Kazakhstan. On another search, I might do it as if I'm in Arkansas. Often for hotel rooms, I will search as if I'm in the Republic of Ireland because that is in the EU, which means stricter rules about hidden fees. And
Hmm.
on the first search, you will see all of the fees included in the price because that's what the EU does. And Ireland, it's going to come up in English. If I do it in France, I'd get the same prices, but the text might be in French. That's why I do Ireland.
That's again another very wonderful tip for anyone looking to plan a vacation. And you literally took the words out of my mouth when you mentioned VPNs, virtual private networks.
Yeah,
Fantastic. Let's talk about loyalty programs. Loyalty programs have become bigger and much more sought after, to the point where a lot of decisions today get shaped by loyalty or loyalty programs. In your view, what's the healthiest way for a traveler to use loyalty but not let point chasing distort their vacation?
I am not an expert on loyalty. I think it takes a certain mindset because it's a game that's always shifting. So you really have to keep up with it. From what I know, you should never get a credit card with an airline or a hotel chain. Instead, you want to get a credit card that can be used with points for a number of airlines and a number of hotel chains. And you have to be very thoughtful about how you do that. You may want to get one where whenever you charge for groceries or another daily expense, you get the points so that you can really amortize what you're buying. Because the truth is, unless you're a real road warrior, it's near impossible to get enough points by actually traveling anymore. You have to do it through credit cards. And you also have to look at the idea, am I bending over backwards to book with a certain airline to try and get points when really, if I played the field, I might pay less for that travel product. So you have to balance collecting points, which I don't think you do by traveling anymore, maybe with hotels more than airlines, a little bit more. But you have to balance that by where am I actually finding the best deals?
Absolutely. And one of the dangers I've always had, focus on the core problem. Your core problem is acing the vacation. And then focus on what gets you the best deal and what gets you the best points. So keep a
Sure.
menu of credit cards. Like you said today, you earn many more points using credit cards than from airline or hotel loyalty programs. So,
But you have to be the kind of person who pays off their credit card on time. A problem with a
absolutely.
lot of these loyalty credit cards is they have terrible, terrible late fees, and people get trapped in this cycle of paying too much in fees for these credit cards so that they're actually not saving on their travels because they've been careless.
Absolutely. And I think that's another fantastic point, an important one for people to remember. So we've discussed several topics and very interesting ones. Let's close out with the hot topic of, everywhere I go. Let's talk about AI. I know you've spoken about how AI helps and hurts when it comes to travel. I also know that AI can churn out wrong information or create fake travel tech ecosystems. As AI gets smarter, what role do you think it should play in travel? and what should we watch out for?
Well, it's not clear to me that AI is ever going to stop hallucinating. And I think it's not clear to the folks who created AI. I mean, if you look me up on AI, it's going to tell you that I'm married to the president of Columbia University. Her name is Claire Shipman. My husband's name is Malin Stewart. He's a professor at Columbia. His colleagues think it's hilarious that he's been given a promotion in his marriage to me. I have no way of going to AI and
And
getting
correcting
that
it.
fixed.
Yeah.
You know, there's a wonderful restaurant in London called Punjab. It's the oldest Indian restaurant in London. AI says they serve halal food. They do not. And that has led to some serious problems for them because people who are Muslim who keep halal, they do not want to be going to a restaurant where they can't eat. And Punjab has desperately tried to get that fixed, but there's no there. There's nobody to talk to about these mistakes. So you see you see a lot of hallucinating. We do at Frommer's, we do a study every year about the best search engines or booking engines for hotels and restaurants. And this year, for the first time, along with Expedia, Orbitz, Travelocity, Booking.com, and the like, we added ChatGPT, we added Grok, we added the other engines. In terms of finding the lowest prices most consistently. In fact, a couple of them gave us itineraries that didn't exist. So you have to be really careful with AI in terms of what's the word? How factual it is. Um, Also, you have a lot of people using AI to create very bogus travel products. Right now, Amazon is selling a lot of AI generated guidebooks, and they're crap. I looked at one about Ireland, and in the section on seasons in Ireland, they had a section on summer in Ireland, a section on spring, but then when it came to fall, it all became about the dangers of falling. So nobody is writing these things, nobody is even editing them. And yet this book had 70 positive reviews because they're also creating AI generated reviews, and Amazon is not policing this properly. So it's a hard thing to know when you're actually encountering an AI generated product. But often it's just not as good as a human made one.
Absolutely. And I 100% agree with that. Expertise is built painstakingly and over time. As a travel website ourselves, but for businesses, we've learned over the course of our 9 year history that investing time and effort in understanding the core problem and products that enable it helps you create a much better solution. Right? That's the reason someone like Expedia or Booking.com have been in the business for as long as they've been and are much more reliable sources of information compared to a new age AI engine. Well, with that, Pauline, we come to the end of the podcast. There are some fantastic learnings I'm taking away from this podcast, and I'm sure my audience also will find your views very, very useful.
Thank you.
Once again, thank you for being a guest on Business Miles, and have a wonderful day.